video is actually a little bit sad and a bit emotional for me to make, which I'm sure will come through in my typical monotone style. And it's a bit sad because I really want to talk about and illustrate and hopefully clarify just kind of how abysmal and superstitious and impotent our modern paradigm is as relating to health and as relating to spirituality. And it's extremely impotent because our very approach, our very mindset, our very foundational way of relating to these things has been so conditioned by parasitic institutions for a very long time. Parasitic institutions, what I mean is basically the fact that if we understand that our psyche when we are born is very open, very malleable, very spontaneous, not yet formed, or the metaphor of the uncarved block. Yet, as the older we get, the more experience we have with the basic formatting of our culture, which in modern times is basically monotheistic religion. Whether that shows up through science and scientism, or through overt monotheism, or through supposedly alternative spirituality, no one ever actually takes the time to understand what these things are and actually go down to the roots and see that the majority of the time the roots are the same. So what I'm saying is, if a person is operating, say, raised in America, they're 30 years old, right? And then now all of a sudden they've gone to acupuncture school and they graduate. Well, it's 99% likely that the fact is they've been viewing acupuncture and the body and health and life itself through the lens of their pre-existing formatting of their sort of secular religious upbringing, where instead of saying, well, there was God and God did all these things, but now I'm just going to call it source or energy, or I'm going to put all these other words on it which actually don't mean that, but because I'm too lazy to actually change or investigate or get in touch with what I actually mean, I'm just going to do this. So we're really not changing anything, we're just sort of rearranging it slightly. Rearranging the furniture on the Titanic and then telling ourselves, yay, look, it's different, it's unique. But then somehow it just doesn't really still have the potency. That's not to say it's not helpful, it's not useful, because obviously it is. So more so what I'm really trying to get at is that pretty much when it comes to health or medicine or solving problems, which, let's face it, the majority of the time people turn to religion and spirituality to do those things, to have some kind of healing, to solve some kind of problem, or to fulfill some kind of desire. That's the majority of the time. We take our imagination, we couple it with our ambition, and layer on a whole bunch of anxiety and desire, and then we call that, oh, this is our religion, this is our spirituality. Interesting. But I get it. I'm the arrogant one. Yeah, I get it. So what happens is we view these things pretty much through the same foundational basis as we view religion. So what happens is we have a problem. Okay, well, the only way we can solve the problem is by going to the high priest. The high priest of the church, or the high priest of the other church of science. And basically, somehow we have no idea. We're just this lowly peasant. We have no idea what could be happening, what it is, how we could be relating. So we have to go to the intermediary, because we go to the high priest of religion, who can talk to God and tell us, what God's thinking and really what our problems are, and how we need to, purify ourselves or stop being sinners. That we can go to the high priest of science, and he can basically be the intermediary between, our bodies, or this complex physiological process which we can't understand because we don't understand the languaging, because it's all in, ancient Greek or whatever the words are some complex science things, which we can't relate to that. I mean, has nothing to do with the fact that this is, my body. And then the other aspect of it is whatever is wrong with us, whatever we're experiencing, is basically some evil demon, which we must get rid of. it's evil and we can't have it. I feel this emotion, or I have this existential issue, or I have this doubt about reality and I can't fucking have that. It's evil, so I need to get rid of it. And somehow the priest, he's going to tell me how to get rid of it, or God's going to tell me what to do, and then I'll be able to get rid of it. Maybe not now, but definitely one day. Maybe. Definitely maybe. Probably. Perhaps. Potentially. And then the other side, I have this evil symptom, this evil dis-ease, and I have to get rid of it because it's evil. And it's just this evil thing which is attacking poor old me. And I've just been living my life, and I've been good, I've been doing the right thing. So why is it attacking me? Or the other side of it is, well, I did do those things, so I do deserve this. So I'm going to flagellate myself because I deserve this. I deserve this pain. And really, the vast majority of the time, these basic frameworks, these basic approaches is how we're relating to health, spirituality, wellness, healing, whatever you want to call it. And we put the people who are supposed authorities on such high pedestals. They're almost these godlike figures, these, high beings who somehow achieved some amazing magical power which we could never relate to and we could never understand. But somehow we just give them our money, we just turn our power over to them, then they will somehow deliver us. And to me personally, that's just really sad. I remember last summer, maybe somewhere around this time, I watched a documentary, or actually a film, on the life of Wilhelm Reich. And basically he was persecuted for suggesting that, perhaps people ought to breathe differently. And that there was some connection between your emotional state and how you breathe. And that perhaps traumas, psychologically or whatever, emotionally, are stored in the body somehow in the tissues. So he was experimenting with, massaging people in certain ways and having them breathe. And he was also suggesting that, basically, when you get emotionally traumatized, your sexual capacity goes down, so you're not really able to really let go and, orgasm or release. And so that's going to actually imbalance your psyche. These basic ideas. And he was persecuted for it. While at the same time, Western medicine, which is clearly more intelligent, more scientific, was saying, lobotomies and shock therapy are actually legitimate avenues. And this asshole over here talking about breathing, talking about the body tissues, talking about that somehow the mind and the body are connected. This guy is a fucking quack. So let's just cut out people's brains and shock them, and that's gonna help them. And obviously, I'm not saying that the Western approach is completely bad, and I'm not saying that Wilhelm Reich was completely good, because let's face it, they're human beings, so they're gonna get some things right. They're gonna miss some things, because that's just what we all do, because we're all a little bit not that bright most of the time, and we get lucky sometimes and stumble on things. So, and it's also the other issue of really looking at things in these purely black and white ways, which I'm sure there's some people watching this who've been so triggered. The fact that I would critique and say anything other than great about these things, that means somehow I'm against them. And there's people watching probably, well, what does he believe in? Well, what does he stand for? Well, I don't understand. Is he an atheist? Is he an agnostic? Is he a theist? I need to put him in this category. It's actually, what I'm saying is thinking in those terms is a disease. It's a state of disease in the mind. It's part of the reason why we're in this problem. It's part of the reason why there's such disempowerment in our world. Because it's not really how life works. Often not really how things are. Sometimes yes, but often not. So it's actually, what I'm trying to suggest is perhaps actually being a bit more engaged within our actual experience. Because the religions of science and the religions of monotheism, their number one foundational basis is the removal of us from our experience. The removal of us from the natural world. And the subsequent elevation or repression of who we actually are. When in reality, perhaps really all we need is this neutral point. People want to grasp and, I need self-love, and I need to be this great divine being. I don't know, just maybe neutrality is a bit more useful. and makes a bit more sense in the grander scheme of things, and perhaps is easier to maintain. Because let's face it, it takes a lot of work to really hate yourself. It does. It takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of work, a lot of commitment. Likewise, it's a lot of work, a lot of energy, a lot of commitment to really elevate yourself. And let's face it, there's two sides of the same coin. You really wouldn't need to do one without the other there tapping you on the shoulder. So every time you feel like shit, it's only because you think you should feel this way. And the only time you really feel this way is because you're comparing yourself to when you felt like shit. So how about step off the hamster wheel and say, well, neutrality, acceptance, groundedness, centeredness, let's give that a shot. But I get it, that's so crazy. Maybe in 500 years our Western paradigm perhaps, or modern paradigm perhaps, may arrive at some basic understandings of these concepts, but perhaps not. And really what I'm talking about in this video is just based on the experiences of talking to a lot of people about a lot of these different issues, and pretty much everyone says the same thing, which is, well, you just need to turn it over to God, or you need to turn to the high priest and let them fix you, you know? If you have let's say you have some issue that's causing you discomfort, some kind of psychological imbalance, whatever. And those are pretty much the solutions people tell you. Go to the therapist. They'll fix you. You'll talk about it, and that'll make it better. And then maybe they'll give you some magical pills, and that'll make you better. Or, you gotta just go to the spiritual practice and purify it and cleanse it and get rid of your sins, and that will fix you. It's like, wait a minute. What's our definition of voodoo again? What's our definition of superstition again? Interesting. Okay. But then if you say to someone, well, what about you? Maybe you're just choosing to show up in a certain way. Maybe you're choosing to repress yourself in a certain way. Maybe you're choosing to carry these things with you, which you're using to manipulate and control other people because of A, B, and C. Talk about those things, which are basically fundamental and foundational, and all of a sudden you're talking nonsense. And the last thing I'll say for this video is, I remember one time on Facebook, two times actually, I'll talk about two questions that I put out there. One was, I basically had said that our experience as humans is often more related to time and rhythm than it necessarily is to space and substance. And everyone was like, oh, what are you talking about? You're so out there. You're so full of shit. What is wrong with you? Or then some people that were obviously trying to, people with a really low self-esteem were like, well, maybe it's both. I don't want to say it's one or the other. I don't want to, really understand or say anything. So maybe it's both. I'll just be safe and say nothing. So I'm like, well, yeah, obviously it's both because time and space are one and the same fabric. But what I'm trying to get you in touch with is the fact that we generally view ourselves as this solid thing. We think somehow there's this soul attached to this solid physical body, meat machine biochemistry thing. And then somehow these things are related or connected, who knows. And then what I'm trying to say is, well, let's look at what is life. Life seems to be a rhythm. You're born, and then you die. Seems like a rhythm. You come out of the vagina through rhythms. Your breathing is rhythm. Your heartbeat's rhythm. Your digestion's rhythm. Many of your cellular functions are rhythms. Blinking is rhythm. Talking is rhythm. Waking up and going to sleep, rhythm. Arousal, satisfaction. Hunger, satisfaction. Waking, sleeping. Do I really need to keep going with these basic rhythm, the basic rhythmic quality of our experience? But how often are we actually in touch with it? How often are we actually really understanding it? The truth is, never. Because the fact that I suggest it is usually odd and weird, because it's too basic and too simple. However, there are many systems and traditions and cultures which got really into studying these rhythms and these patterns and harmonizing with them and studying them to very fine, precise degrees to where we could perhaps use them to our advantage or use them to know when to advance and when to retreat, when to be active and when to rest. Basic functionings which none of us are very good at, to be quite honest, because, you know, we're entitled, capitalistic, secular Christians, basically. So we can do whatever the fuck we want as long as we follow the rules. But sometimes we don't follow the rules because we deserve to, because we're naughty. But then when we do follow the rules, we deserve a treat. Anyhow, so that's the first point. The second story is how I ask people, you know, what do you think you are? You know, what does it mean to be human? Basically, everyone answered, I'm a soul having a human experience. And they answered in terms of science, or they answered in terms of religion, or they answered in terms of trying to be spirituality, but it was that basic statement. All of which is pointing out really just how deeply conditioned we are to think that that's really all that there is to the world, all that there is to our experience. We really need to question and get in touch with, well, what is the definition of arrogance? What is the definition of ignorance, of stupidity, of superstition, of voodoo? What is the definition of these things? If I believe that you can really only see the world in these terms, and I've been trying to only see the world in these terms for my whole life, and probably my entire ancestral base has probably been trying to see it in those terms as well. Interesting. Something to perhaps consider or look at that potentially could be problematic and or demonic, and or potentially why collectively our society and culture is stuck at a very infantile, impotent stage in terms of medicine, in terms of healing, in terms of spirituality, and really understanding life and understanding our experience as human beings. Because all we can relate to those things through is through basically superstition, disempowerment, and magic. Which magic is a real thing, but it's actually, when you get into it, it tends to be more of a science and less of a woo-woo thing. But again, it takes a lot of deconditioning and a lot of intelligence to get to the point where we can understand and see things in such a complex manner. But that's a different thing altogether. So hopefully that makes sense. Thanks for watching, all 7 people that have watched it this far. And I'll talk to you soon.